record. Hi, I'm Jess,
And I'm Chloe.
and we did the innatist approach theory. So, a brief introduction of the innatist theory. The innatist theory is mainly concerned for students when it comes to learning their first language. Chomsky came up with this theory to show how children learn language. He figured out that children learn language through words and phrases they do not know through guessing. He ultimately said that infants learn language by imitation of others around them. The ability to learn language, Chomsky said, was something that all infants are born with. This, this is also known as language acquisition device, LAD. So, details on the theory. Chomsky believed that when infants are born, they are pre-wired for linguistic analysis and include universal grammar. This helps them distinguish between grammatical rules of language that they have picked up from their parents, caregivers, and other people that are around them. Children construct grammar by using hypothesis testing. Chomsky helped to bring about another theory called the creative construction theory. This theory was based on the assumption that language acquisition is innately determined, that we are born with a certain system of language. Details of the study are found on page 65, and in this study, it was led by Dooley and Burt. The study had a large group of students who spoke Spanish and Chinese. These students were learning English in school as a second language. Samples of the English language were collected from these students through an interview process that involved colorful pictures of cartoons. They had to answer questions about the pictures that would elicit them the use of certain grammatical structures. If they had any grammatical issues, they would be examined to see whether they were similar to the types of errors young native English speaking children make. So the Innatist perspective result of the study. In the final result of the study, it shows that some learning errors can be influenced because of their first language. Most of the errors were similar to their classmates that already speak English. Based on the results, Dooley and Burt proposed that English language learners creatively construct the rules of the second language in a manner similar to that observed in the first language acquisition. They decided that learning a second language is similar to learning a first language, but not completely the same. Concluded that second language acquisition is similar, though not identical to the first language acquisition. All right, so the next level. In 1974, Dooley and Burt used their findings to refute the hypothesis that learners' errors will generally be predictable from the conservative analysis of the learner's mother's tongue and the development of the second language. Constructivist, Chloe, help me out.
Constructivist
Analysis. A procedure for comparing phonological, morphological, and syntactic rules of two languages to predict areas of difficulty in second language development. As an example shown in the book, Spanish creates a plural ending to a noun which either adds an s or s's, such as casa or casas.
And for the theories of language acquisition, Innatist perspective, that this is a chart that was taken from the book, but I felt like it was important to mention in here. The acquisition aspect 1, linguistic focus, and from the Innatist perspective, is the child's syntax that's involved in the process. And then acquisition aspect number 2, process of acquisition, from the Innatist perspective, what the central focus is, hypothesis testing and creative construction of the syntactic rules using LAD. And then acquisition aspect number 3, role of the child, and the Innatist perspective on that is that it's a primary role equipped with biological LAD, and child plays major role in the acquisition. And then acquisition aspect number 4, role of social environment, and what is the main focus on this is, for the Innatist perspective, is it's a minor role. Language used by others merely triggers LAD. And now there's a lot of criticisms behind it. But although this theory provides what some claim is responsible explanation about acquiring language, this theory lacks sufficient evidence. Some of the cases against this theory include, firstly, that LAD is an abstract concept and lacks adequate scientific support. Secondly, the theory is heavily based on the learner's linguistic compliance, which is, again, abstract phenomenon. And thirdly, the theory placed more emphasis on linguistic compliance of adult native speakers, but not enough on developmental aspects of language acquisition. And Chomsky's work has been highly controversial, rekindling the age-old debate over whether language exists in the mind before experience. Despite its few limitations, the innate theory is rich enough to provide a considerable idea of how a child acquires his or her first language. And Gardner also mentioned Chomsky's innatist theory, and he did not regard the role of parents and caregivers towards a child's language development. It was unacceptable because adults were needed to make the language function adequately. Language should be socially accepted. Children were regarded to be proficient language learner only when they have produced a language within the specific construction of meaning. This process would not need, especially adults to complete. Would need actually adults to complete. Thus, innatists would not completely without interactionist perspectives. One of the biggest critics of innatist approach is Jean Piaget. All right, part 2 of the presentation, and I was about to talk about Piaget's view about innate approach. And Piaget, he argues that the innatist approach lacks concrete truth. Piaget says that knowledge is acquired through action and experience, and that assimilation is the fundamental relationship that constitutes knowledge. He finds constructivism the only way to explain acquisition of knowledge. To him, constructivism explains both the mechanisms of the formation of new concepts and the characteristics these concepts acquire in the process of becoming logically necessary. In order to accept the innatist hypothesis, Chomsky would have to explain through which mutation in the process of natural selection, universal grammar, developed, while constructivism depends on experience and has nothing to do with mutation. Chomsky actually fights back on this with his own views about what Piaget says in his own article. He argues that on a large scale, he argues that Piaget's arguments against his theory lack the same truth as the innatist hypothesis does, and that Piaget's theories are subject to an exact same weakness that he accuses Chomsky of. He says that it is not possible to assume that there is an answer to every development. Therefore, he cannot explain the mutation of formation.
So we do have a short film that we will post on Plato as well. It just gives you a better understanding of this theory. So if you have time, feel free to watch it. And then a couple questions we have is, what does LAD stand for? And is there any areas that you need further clarification? If so, let Chloe and I know if the video doesn't touch base upon it or we didn't. And that is all. So thank you for watching and have a good night.
Bye-bye.